what are some emerging technologies or discoveries that could revolutionize our ability to explore or utilize space further?
I'm restricting my answer now to the downstream software segment because we don't do hardware. So in order to utilize space more, traditionally you had one or two major satellite companies owning all of the very expensive big satellites with high resolution. With a limited number of satellites, the update frequency, the coverage of the satellites was obviously limited. And now with more and more startups, especially in low Earth orbit or very low Earth orbit, more and more satellites are getting brought up. So the cost of acquisition per image or per square kilometer is getting down, analog to like the transportation cost up to space. So this plays in huge favor for companies like ours because we get more access to satellite imagery, and even if big satellite companies don't like this, satellite imagery will become a commodity, and this means it's a kind of democratization because everyone will have access to this imagery in some form or other.
Perfect. Abdullah?
So when I think of satellite data today, if you want to dream about the perfect satellite data, it will be, what you can replace drone data. So we're talking about very, very fine, high resolution that can go to 7 centimeters or 3 centimeters. And the other dream that I think it will come true, and I'm just a dreamer of technology, as I said, my background's in engineering and solar power, but I would like to see satellites to monitor a certain piece of land on a continuous matter. And then we can replace CCTV by continuous satellite, high resolution satellite. It's a dream. I don't know if we will see it soon, probably in 5-10 years, but this is, I think, where everyone would love to see satellite data providing.
Okay, I'll move with you, Sam.
Well, I think the last decade or so has seen an incredible evolution in the space sector. So we've seen orders of magnitude change in terms of the number of satellites launched and the amount of private capital into the space sector, and that's given us the ability to have ubiquitous connectivity and the sort of intelligence we need to manage our planet in the 21st century. But really now the change that we're seeing, the step change that we're about to go on, is all to do with launch and both capacity and cost. So launch costs have dropped 2 orders of magnitude since the days of the space shuttle, and they're about to drop 2 orders more. And what that gives us the ability to do is completely reimagine the way we use space. So we start to be able to launch stuff to be together, to interact, have that genuine economic interaction in space, so proper in-space economy, with the aim of building stuff. So it's an era of economic development in space, and it's an era of a large infrastructure. So large infrastructure, satellites that are hundreds of meters, kilometers in scale, that can deliver huge benefits to Earth. So space is our adjacent economic sphere, and almost by definition, a number of the greatest challenges on Earth are going to have solutions from space, or at least in part from space. And that's the really exciting thing that we can move towards. So we're looking at things like large-scale satellites for direct mobile communications, continental continuous Earth observation, data centers in space, of course space-based solar power, microgravity, all these things that have huge terrestrial need, which means significant finance can come into the space sector, and we're then going to see this massive transformation that's going to see both a new era of economic development, a whole economic zone in space, and a really bright future on Earth.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll continue with you as we're going back and forward this way. How can private companies and international collaboration be leveraged to further space exploration and development?
I think both that public-private relationship and international collaboration, they've always been key for space. And in fact, if you look back historically, arguably one of the reasons that we landed on the moon in the 60s. One of the reasons it didn't really kick on from then was that we had just in inverted commas governments and a few large primes which didn't really drive the competitive energy and tension that can really accelerate growth. But we are there now. We've got incredible ecosystems in space that are building. And so that private enterprise and commercial private enterprise is really key. I think to my point on large infrastructure, what I'd say there is that this is about large infrastructure in space, and space needs to stop being so apologetic about the amount of funding it requests. Yeah, we need to stop thinking about space as government funded, or if it is, it's energy infrastructure. You know, billions and billions go into energy infrastructure, and that's what we should be bringing into space for the benefit of everyone on Earth. So real innovation between public and private to bring huge new companies to light that are going to benefit Earth is key. And then space has always been an incredible sort of fabric for international collaboration, and we need more and more of that today. You know, it can hopefully be something that continues to bring nations together with the aim of really benefiting everyone on Earth.
Great, and it reminded me of the fintech sector. Back then, the fintech sector for years had only ATM, and that was the innovation. And then look where we're heading now with the open technologies and open banking and so on. Yeah, it's a great point to mention. We'll move with Abdul-Ilah.
I don't know much. I mean, I am not the private sector, but from the national lab perspective or from a research perspective, government's been putting money, a lot of money into satellite and into space. And nowadays you see benefits and you see application of it. What always comes into my mind is, similar to any technology, government has already been the innovative and the first player to take place into space. But also, you know, we're finding applications now for the private sector to, whether for startup or even well-established companies, to make revenues. And going back to governments are using these cases with their change detections, with their application to feed into their whatever model government are building. So there's definitely a link, and without this link, technology hasn't been really developed. You haven't seen the space technology to what we have, you know, what we have achieved so far. There's an idea, but I lost it. I'll come back to it. But this is why my take into this question.
Great, thank you, Abdul-Ilah. I'll move with Michael.
I think I only can support what had been said here. If you look to the original race to the moon, the first try, it was driven by two superpowers trying to show off who gets up first. There was no real commercial need back then. It was other motivations, but this paved the way. Technology was invented, which otherwise might have maybe invented way later because of the high entry costs. But through this race between the two superpowers who invested everything to be first, suddenly technology had been invented, which could be commercialized later on, and now we have private players in the space race showing the next step. So I see a massive shift from public to private, which makes the market more accessible. It says costs coming down, and like in our case of my company, we noticed in Earth observation, remote sensing, it's very hard to understand satellite imagery. Every satellite is different, every resolution is different. AI models needs to be trained very long to work on one sensor. It does not transfer to another sensor automatically. So lots of hurdles for companies who want to get insights. And now coming back to my friend's company again, when he needs to know about solar capacity on rooftops in a place like Riyadh, we won't do this job for him. We now give him a tool so he can do this on his own by looking in the images he has. We don't matter what type of images, and he is drawing with a scribble system saying, I want rooftops without roof clutter, without AC units, and he gets his answers to verticalize and to build a business on his own. So we are delivering a tool to help others commercialize and verticalize imagery from space.